I'm Dr. Dreadful, and this is my zombie lab. Makes lots of gross things, like zombie brains.
Then eat them.
Can I help you?
Excuse me, hi. I wanted to find out about the Unlimited for Life guarantee.
Sure.
Skechers Aeroburst, the first running shoe designed with aerodynamics in mind.
Saw to cut through zombies and 8 darts to finish them. New Nerf brain saw.
In Wisconsin today, Jeffrey Dahmer died. He was murdered in the prison where he was sent in 1991 for murdering 17 men and boys. In 1991, the revelation that he had eaten or otherwise defiled some of his victims revolted the nation. His death may not be as shocking.
The divine text says, "Marvel not at this, for the hour is coming in the which all that are in the graves shall hear his voice, and shall come forth. They that have done good unto the resurrection of life, and they that have done evil unto the resurrection of damnation." Father, bless this holy book now, and your word as it goes forth. Father, for the purpose that you intended. In Jesus' name, amen.
A big explosion has just occurred. Everyone is running from the entire financial district now. The smoke is filling the entire area. Let's go!
A plane from an aviation school crashed, and tonight we know no one survived.
Tonight, another mass shooting in America.
It comes 10 days after the mass shooting at a supermarket in Buffalo, in which 10 people were killed.
A gunman opens fire on second, third, and fourth graders.
Breaking news tonight, the horrific shooting rampage at an elementary school in Texas.
14 children and a teacher killed.
I know my time in prison will be terrible, but I deserve whatever I get because of what I have done.
But the day is going to come when you're going to carry the body of a mother. Most dear, precious mother. The one that loved you and brought you into this world. The day will come when you'll carry her body to the graveyard. Or that dear, precious father that was there for you and raised you and taught you what you needed to know and was faithful to you as a dad, that you had great love and respect for. You'll watch him die and you'll carry his body to the graveyard. Or maybe it's a precious little child, a little girl or a little boy. That's the delight of your life, and for some horrible reason they're taken away from you, and you carry that little lifeless body to the graveyard.
Local officials say more than 100 people were killed when torrential rainfall caused the Guadalupe River to surge nearly 30 feet. Many children are among the dead and dozens are still missing. Rescue crews have not found any survivors since Friday.
The Apostle Paul said, if Christ be not risen from the dead, then they're dead and perished and are no more. What a horrible thought. If I thought that were true, that they're dead and you'll never see them again, then you have no reason to tell me at all how I should live. Where do you come off giving me your morality and your standards and your judgments and your rights and your wrongs? If there is no absolute God and absolute eternity, then there are no absolutes. It is dog eat dog. It is whatever I have to do to survive. And if I have to take you out to survive, I take you out to survive. If I have to remove you from the face of the earth, and friend, there are people by the thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions who have no hope, they have no future. It's all about survival, and they will do whatever they have to do to survive. Make no mistake about it. But if you're born again, I can go to the graveyard of my grandfather and my grandmother and my mom and my dad. My friend, I've been here a long time. Of all the caskets we've carried out, all the way from little caskets no bigger than this, to the caskets of young married people, to the caskets of older people. I've been out there, I know where they are. I've been to graveyards and places that people don't even know exist. I can go to these graves and I can stand and I can see their faces and hear their voices and remember what they were like in this world. Let me tell you something, I'll see them again.
The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is making sure the people are ready for anything, Jess, even a zombie apocalypse.
Why not? They have a new ad campaign telling you to get ready for the emergency. It includes this poster advising you to get a kit, make a plan, and be prepared.
Here's the thing. This is not just another zombie movie. This isn't fiction. It's about a real-life zombie outbreak that's already beginning to unfold. And I'm not talking about zombies metaphorically either. I'm talking about an actual, real-life outbreak, including hordes of real people classified as inhuman, wandering aimlessly through the streets and being mowed down by armed forces like human targets. You know, and granted, we're not quite there yet, but in some ways it's already happening. And yeah, I know how that sounds. I mean, it probably feels like a ridiculous thing to even consider, you know, because here in the real world, the dead don't rise from the grave, you know, and you've never been chased through the streets by the walking dead, so let's just go ahead and admit that right off the bat. But then, let's take a closer look at just how popular this storyline has become, because it's not just overplayed, it's literally everywhere, and it's been that way for a long time. So the question is, why? I mean, seriously, what's up with this cultural obsession with the undead? And why is this one idea constantly being regurgitated over and over again on repeat? Well, sometimes the best way to answer a question is by asking a better question. Like, what if this zombie narrative is not just another trend, but a tactic? You know, what if it's something more coordinated? What if it's an agenda, or even a psyop? Or maybe it's predictive programming on a mass scale. I mean, think about it. Is it possible that all these zombie stories that have been recycled again and again for decades have slowly been conditioning us to celebrate the extermination of the infected? You know, to shoot first, feel nothing, and then move on. Because killing a zombie doesn't feel like killing a person. You're not ending a life, you're removing a threat. You're purging a problem. And of course, it's all fiction when it's on the screen, but after being soaked in that storyline for years, don't you think it's worth asking what we're being trained for? And why are zombies everywhere now? I mean everywhere, not just in video games and Netflix shows, but in Walmart toy aisles, and on t-shirts and lunchboxes and coloring books. Why is something so grotesque and horrifying being marketed across the board now, you know, to every age group, even little kids?
Jonathan, you're looking good. Jonathan just got an awesome face paint job. What do you think?
I like turtles.
All right, you're great zombie. And good times here at the Waterfront Village.
And it seems like there's no end in sight. I mean, you'd think that people would be sick of this story by now. You know, you'd think that Hollywood, with all its supposed creativity, would have moved on to something else by this point. And people say, well, the industry just gives the people what it wants. But people will consume whatever they're fed. I mean, people just watch what's put in front of them. And what gets put in front of them is no accident. There's an entire machine behind the scenes deciding which stories to push, what imagery to repeat, and what messages to burn into our brains, day after day. And that's why there's really no need to ask why we're being bombarded with this narrative, because the answer is right in front of us. You see, the zombie is something more than just a fictional monster. And I think that the zombie apocalypse is more than just a scary story. It's a reflection of a culture that's falling apart. A culture like ours. One that doesn't fear death because it no longer values life. I mean, think about it. We may not be killing off hordes of the undead, but we are killing off hordes of the unborn. Millions every year. And it kind of reminds me of something that the Bible said.
This know also, that in the last days perilous times shall come. For men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, without natural affection, truce breakers, false accusers, incontinent, fierce, despisers of those that are good, traitors, heady, high-minded, lovers of pleasures more than lovers of God.
And that's not waiting to be fulfilled. That's prophecy that's playing out right now. And if you ask me, that's what the foundation of the zombie narrative is all about. It's not just what's happening on the screen, it's what's happening in the minds of the people that are sitting on the couch and watching the screens. And that's the scariest part of this story. You know, it's not the dead coming back to life, but it's the living falling into death. And maybe that sounds a little bit too dramatic, but I don't think so. because this is not just about entertainment. It's about what that entertainment reveals about us. You know, when you got millions of children around the world just being flooded with brutal depictions of blood and guts and zombie hordes around every corner, and they're being indoctrinated with scenes of senseless violence and murder, you know, from cradle to grave, I think that that should disturb us. Because I've enjoyed that stuff too. I mean, I like scary movies just as much as the next guy. And in my lifetime, I've spent entire summers playing all types of violent video games. I've blown off more zombie heads than I could ever even count, you know, and I've enjoyed every minute of it because for some twisted reason, it appeals to my flesh. And you could call me a hypocrite if you want, you know, for calling it out, but I also don't want to just sit here and pretend it's not messed up. Because what happens when you live in a world where families sit around the TV together, you know, in their living rooms, while watching these movies with brutal depictions of violence and cannibalism, all under the guise of spending quality time together? Well, I'll tell you what happens. You end up with a world full of desensitized and bloodthirsty people, you know, and after enough time, you end up living in a world where the Antichrist doesn't have to show up like some satanic dictator, forcing innocent people to bow down before him. No, he just needs to show up in a world that's been prepared for him, you know, a world that's ready for him, a world that has already killed off compassion, you know, and honestly, I think that that's the world that we live in right now. So I hope you don't take this as some holier-than-thou Christian, you know, sitting up on a high horse and talking down to you about the evils of pop culture, because that's not what this is, and I'm no better than you or anyone else. So let's just take a step back and look into this together. Because I know that I can't be the only one who's starting to realize that for all this time that we thought we were just being entertained, maybe we were actually being conditioned.
Congress just passed a law removing all human rights from the infected people that came back to life. Use whatever force is necessary to eliminate the threat.
Now, to my knowledge, the earliest true account of somebody being raised from the dead actually comes straight from the Bible. Think of Lazarus. 4 days in the tomb, his body already starting to decay, and yet at the sound of Jesus Christ's voice, he stood up and walked out, still wrapped in his grave clothes. And then, of course, there's the resurrection of Jesus himself. And he wasn't raised by a prophet or any outside force, but through the power of God. You know, he willingly laid down his life and then took it back up again. And Jesus didn't just escape death, he conquered death from the inside out. You know, and these resurrection accounts from the Bible, they're not horror stories, they're miracles, moments that revealed the glory of God and that pointed towards a greater resurrection that's still to come. They were signs of eternal life and proof that through Christ, death can be defeated. But that's not what we're talking about today, you know, in this chapter, because that's not what this world chose to glorify. While biblical resurrection is all about life, the resurrection of the zombie is all about death. You know, it's not a miracle, it's a mockery. And this is the aspect of zombie lore that most people have overlooked. Because when you look at all this through a spiritual lens, you start to understand that what we're witnessing in this zombie narrative is actually a perverted and grotesque inversion of everything sacred. At the very center of the zombie myth is a blasphemous parody of resurrection itself. Think about that. I mean, a quick internet search will show you that the theme of resurrection, you know, of the dead being brought to life, is mentioned more than 40 times in the Bible. It's a central concept. It's actually the primary theme of the scriptures and of the gospel. I mean, scripture teaches that resurrection is a miracle of God. It's the power of God to bring the dead to life, both spiritually and physically. In fact, there's 3 specific people in the New Testament who Jesus raised from the dead, like literally brought back to life from the dead, real physical resurrections. And then in a spiritual sense, every true believer in Christ experiences a resurrection of their own, because the Bible tells us in Ephesians 2 and verse 1 that we were dead in our trespasses and sins, not just lost, not just blind, but dead. And then through Christ, we've been made alive, you know, not just improved, not just forgiven, but resurrected. We were spiritually dead, we were cut off from God, but in his mercy, God breathes life into the lifeless. You know, he doesn't just repair the old self, he brings you to life. He creates a new one, a new heart, a new nature, a new creature. And that's what salvation is. So in a very real way, resurrection isn't just part of the gospel, it is the gospel. I mean, resurrection is what it means to be born again, you know, to be raised from death into life with Christ. But now let's look at the world, because in this zombie lore, the idea of resurrection becomes a curse. And honestly, it's the opposite of being born again. It's actually anti-resurrection. And really, it's anti-Christ. And before you go accusing me of stretching things or being hyperbolic, let's be fair. I don't think that most of the writers pushing this stuff are doing it on purpose. You know, they're not sitting in dark rooms plotting ways to blaspheme the gospel. Most of the time, it's not some atheist screenwriter or game developer that's consciously trying to attack Jesus. I mean, honestly, I'm sure that the gospel is probably the furthest thing from their minds, you know, while they're writing their zombie stories. No, they're just thinking about zombies, you know, repeating the same old worn-out cliches and doing what's already been done a million times over. But if you have even a basic level of spiritual discernment, and if you have a biblical understanding of how Satan operates, then you'll recognize that there's a deeper reality at play here. Because just like Scripture says, the God of this world has blinded the minds of the unbelieving. So even if the messenger doesn't know that they're being used, the message still goes out. And we'll explore that concept even deeper in a later chapter, this disturbing inversion of the Bible's most sacred theme. But for now, I'll just leave it there, because there's a big difference between the dead being brought to life and the undead crawling out of a grave to eat human brains. Where did this modern idea of zombies come from? Well, based on what I could find, the earliest written mention of a zombie-like figure didn't come from Hollywood. It came from Haitian voodoo tradition. A zombie wasn't a dead body that was brought back to life. It was a living person under the control of a sorcerer, somebody whose mind has been enslaved through dark magic. And apparently, alongside spells and rituals, the sorcerer would use a powder laced with toxins that are found in a pufferfish, you know, also known as zombie dust, to induce a trance-like dream state in the victim. And once the mind of the victim was weakened, or the zombie, the person would be enslaved and forced to work on behalf of the magician. So these weren't flesh-eating monsters. They were more like hypnotized workers, lifeless and obedient, and trapped somewhere between life and death. But back then, the fear wasn't about the dead rising. It was actually something deeper. You know, it was about the fear of losing your will, the fear of becoming a puppet. You know, this fear that your body might still be moving while your mind, and really your soul, was already gone. And then in 1818, Mary Shelley published the book Frankenstein, a story that many now see as a precursor to the zombie genre. Now, the creature in the book Frankenstein wasn't a zombie in the traditional sense, but it was a reanimated corpse. At its core, it was really a warning, a chilling look at what happens when man dares to play God and then suffers the consequences. But in the end, it was still just a story. You know, a scary one for sure, but fiction nonetheless. And in the decades that followed, other classic monsters began to take shape. You know, you had Dracula by Bram Stoker, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson, and The Island of Dr. Moreau by H.G. Wells, just to name a few. But zombies were something different. Because this time, the threat wasn't some ancient evil, you know, in a distant castle. It wasn't some horrifying monster that, you know, you can only envision in your imagination. No, the zombie was your next door neighbor, your best friend, your parents, your children. You know, it replaced this concept of a hideous monster with a familiar face of somebody that you know. You know, somebody that just yesterday was your relative or your friend or your neighbor, and they have died, and now they are just a lifeless corpse that still resembles the person that you once knew, but they've been replaced by a soulless monster. It was less than 100 years ago, just back in 1929, when American readers were first introduced to the word zombie through a book called The Magic Island by William Seabrook. The Magic Island was a sensational travelogue that detailed his time in Haiti and the rituals of those voodoo sorcerers that we discussed earlier, including their so-called zombie laborers. And while The Magic Island didn't reach the same literary fame of Dracula or Frankenstein, it really didn't have to, because it planted a seed, a strange and disturbing idea that would go on to reshape the entire horror genre. And it wouldn't take long for Hollywood to take notice, because by the 1930s, movies, known then as motion pictures, had already become a cultural force, captivating audiences and reshaping the way that stories were told. And then in 1932, the very first zombie film ever hit theaters. And I know that's hard to believe because there's been like a million zombie movies since then. But yeah, 1932 was the very first zombie movie ever. It was called White Zombie. And no, I'm not talking about that crappy Rob Zombie band from the 90s. I mean the original White Zombie, the movie starring Bela Lugosi. But this version of the story looked a lot different from the zombies that we know today. There were no pandemics and no viruses or cannibalism, no rotting flesh. It was more about occultism and slavery and mind control. So, maybe it was an early foreshadowing of this brainwashed satanic society that we see today, where millions are just walking through life in a zombie-like stupor and programmed by media and manipulated by fear and, trained to obey without ever even asking why. But I digress. Anyways, it really wasn't until 1968 that the zombies that we know today came to life, because that was when George A. Romero released Night of the Living Dead. Now, ironically, Romero never even used the word zombie, but the creatures did fit that mold. They were reanimated corpses that fed on human flesh, and it was a genuinely disturbing film. It was shot in gritty black and white with no musical score, and just this eerie sense of realism. But I think that the most unsettling part of Night of the Living Dead wasn't even the zombies. It was the people, the paranoia and the fear and the breakdown of community. A scene where a man gets gunned down in cold blood, not because he was infected, but just because he kind of looked like one of them.
All right, Vince, hit him in the head, right between the eyes. Good shot. Okay, he's dead. Let's go get him. That's another one for the fire.
So Night of the Living Dead kind of painted a bleak picture of how people can turn on each other when fear takes over. And that theme, that deep, unsettling tension, would echo again and again through decades of zombie storytelling that followed. I mean, as it turns out, the zombie genre became a surprisingly effective vessel for exploring real-world issues, like racism or government failure and human brutality and moral collapse. And, in Romero's sequels, like Dawn of the Dead, he pushed that metaphor even further, setting that story in a shopping mall where the undead just shuffled mindlessly past food courts and storefronts, and they wandered past mannequins and merchandise and stumbled through the wreckage of this material excess that once defined the American dream. But then again, I admit that I tend to look for a deeper meaning in everything, so I don't know, maybe it was never meant to be anything more than just another gory horror movie. But whatever the case, whether or not these films were intentionally layered with symbolism, one thing was clear: the audience loved it. They just kept buying tickets and filling up the theaters, and some screamed, some laughed, some covered their eyes, some even threw up and vomited, while others gave standing ovations. But whatever the reaction, one thing was undeniable: that the zombie had now become a cultural phenomenon. And in the decades that followed, the zombie genre just exploded. I mean, there must have been 1,000 different movies, each with its own spin on the concept. And after the years, we've just been absolutely inundated with this zombie narrative, until it's all just become so familiar that it hardly even scares us anymore. So at this point, it's not a trope, it's more like a template. It's a cultural script that's been run through our minds so many times, just over and over again, until it's no longer even shocking anymore. And I'm here to say that maybe that was the point all along.
Wouldn't be one.
There's nobody coming, and there's nobody out there!
Hi, I have a delivery for Iris Chan.
The antivirus, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
If we don't include the Impact Smart hard drive, we can ship today.
No. That satellite has to have an Impact Smart hard drive.
The all-new Toshiba satellite series. We thought of everything.
I'm John Wayne. Is there any better or equal hope in the world, Lincoln asked, than the ultimate justice of the people? We Americans believe there is not. The stonework of our national life is made of this belief. We believe in many things, but this belief that man is a responsible being bears out our own unique stamp as a nation. As a people, we are active and often noisy. We are industrious, oftentimes to the bafflement of ourselves and our friends. We relax as hard as we work. We are proud. We are sentimental. Beauty is of national concern to us. For some of us, its pursuit is a deadly serious pastime. The rest of us simply enjoy the results. Some of our national spirit shows up in the monuments we erect, the large ones and the small ones. It rings through the music which animates us.
Attaboy, Homer, swing it! Second jump out and lead to the fourth, 4 hands out in the circle, swing the opposite lady and you keep the gal behind you.
We have, on occasion, some difference of feeling. At other times, we are united. We are all these things and many more, but above everything else, we are free. We believe in the ultimate justice which we as free men can create. Our heritage of freedom is our most priceless possession. Men before us have died to keep it alive, and men in our times have done the same. But although men have died to preserve it, we may die again. The glory of this heritage is the vision of life that it has given us. A life of dignity and nobility of spirit, such as men have never before been enriched by in the long march through the history they have recorded. There is a phrase which recurs in our national documents, the literature of our story as a people, which points to the source of our belief in individual freedom, and defines perhaps better than any other the nub of the conflict between the opposing systems of values which sweep the world today. That phrase is, "This nation under God." That phrase and others like it set the standard of our concept of man. As a creature of God, man is a being with dignity and conscience, with the ability to determine right from wrong, and the obligation to act on that right. From this belief in man as a responsible being flow the beliefs in his other qualifications which we accept, usually even without bothering to think about them, as parts of that vague condition which we call the American way.
This is Mr. Montgomery. I met him a few weeks ago in New York.
Oh, how are you? You live here?
Yes.
Well, maybe you know what a zombie is.
When a person dies and is buried, it seems there are certain voodoo priests who have the power to bring him back to life.
Horrible.
It's worse than horrible because a zombie has no will of his own. You see them sometimes walking around blindly with dead eyes, following orders, not knowing what they do, not caring.
You mean like Democrats?
When people talk about zombies today, they're not just referencing folklore or fiction anymore. You know, they're actually not even talking about zombies. No, now it's become something else. It's like a weaponized metaphor. It's a way to describe somebody who disagrees with you. And this isn't just something that's coming from the liberal left. It's coming from everybody, you know, including me, including us. We've often referred to the masses as zombies. I mean, I know I have, you know, I've said that they're brainwashed and programmed and blind. And honestly, it's not wrong. I mean, zombie is a pretty accurate way to describe the state of our culture. We were all there during the pandemic, watching thousands of people wearing their masks and afraid to breathe, lining up for injections, standing 6 feet apart, and acting like actors in a dystopian horror movie, just mindlessly complying with the demands of a system that openly mocks God and glorifies rebellion, and simultaneously demanding complete obedience, you know. So let's be real, there is truth in that observation, but it's not the whole truth. Because as soon as we label somebody else as a zombie, they turn around and label us the same way. I mean, to them, we're the brainwashed ones. We're the religious extremists, the science deniers, you know, the conspiracy theorists, the fearmongers, the dangers to society. To them, we're the ones who are infected with dangerous misinformation. So think about that. The zombie metaphor has become like a two-way mirror. One where everybody sees themselves as awake and the other side is lost.
The real zombie apocalypse, liberalism.
New York Times columnist Paul Krugman, his latest op-ed titled, "All the President's Zombies."
He joins us to talk about his brand new book, Obama Zombies, How the Liberal Machine Brainwashed My Generation.
During a zombie outbreak, society would collapse, the government would implode, and we would all have to retreat to our homes surrounded by our guns. It sounds pretty right-wing to me.
Or it sounds like a town hall.
Because you guys watching me right now, you're not zombies, you're watching me because I'm delivering commentary.
Republicans bring us a new talking point on health care reform. Democrats will turn you and your loved ones into zombies.
And in that reflection, both sides begin to believe that the other must be stopped, or silenced, isolated, deplatformed, you know, censored, or maybe eventually eradicated. And that's where the real danger of this overplayed narrative starts to come into focus. Because I believe that that's the real agenda behind the zombie programming. I mean, that's the effect of years of conditioning, training us to see other people not as human beings made in the image of God, but as dangerous vectors of infection, you know, whether that's a real virus or a fake virus, or even a so-called mind virus, just having the wrong ideology. Because what happens when society is taught that somebody else's worldview, or their words or beliefs, or maybe even their presence, is a threat to public health? That somebody with a different ideology or different politics than you is a threat to national security? Well, you already know the answer. It's mass dehumanization. And once you strip the humanity from that person, then violence doesn't really feel like violence anymore. You know, it doesn't feel so cruel. In fact, it feels justified. You know, suddenly it's not murder, it's extermination, right? It's not evil, it's necessary. And no matter what side of the political fence that you're on, we've all been taught to see each other not as brothers and sisters or bearers of God's image, but as threats, as enemies, you know, as brainwashed zombies who are infected with the wrong ideas. And that is the terrifying genius of the zombie metaphor, because it strips away the soul before the body is ever even harmed, you know, and it gives you permission to hate your neighbor because you stop seeing them as a human.
Charlie Kirk was in the neck.
Charlie Kirk just got shot. Seen somebody just took a shot at one of the Fantafast's favorite 5-mile-wide mouthpieces, Charles Chuckle Kirk.
And this training hasn't just happened in theory. I mean, it's been drilled into us through countless movies and TV shows and books and video games with surround sound and cinematic realism and photorealistic graphics.
They used to be our fans, but then they turned into zombies.
Look at them! Oh my!
We cheer for headshots. We rack up kill counts, and we survive wave after wave of enemies that look like our friends and our neighbors and our own families, because that's what they were just before they became infected, right? But now that they are infected, they're fair game. And again, I say this as somebody who enjoys video games, you know, and scary movies and all that stuff. But it doesn't take a genius to realize that the more we play and the more we watch and the more we laugh at this casual simulation of senseless killing, and as the line between entertainment and reality gets more and more blurry, the easier it will become to forget where the fiction ends and reality begins.
What would you do with that money?
I'd love to take a tropical holiday.
I'd be careful with your skin tone.
No, I get it. Because I'm a zombie.
I get it.
Yeah, that's funny.
All my undead, we are back.
I'll see you out there.
See you out there.
And don't take it personally.
You could get a refund advance of up to $1,200.
Thanks to myeducation.com, I found just the right program for me. And now I have the life and career I've always wanted.
And of course, I know that some people are going to laugh at that idea, that fictional storylines are being used to train the public, or that zombie movies could be part of a deeper agenda to condition us. But frankly, I'm not afraid of being laughed at by a culture that's already hypnotized. You know, I'm not ashamed to be mocked by a society that's so dumbed down that they don't even know what they're watching anymore. You know, people don't stop to think. They don't ask questions, you know. People don't consider the content that they consume. They just absorb it. And we're surrounded nowadays in this society by people who build their entire identity around celebrity gossip and TikTok trends. People who genuinely believe that their worldview is their own, when in reality it's just been downloaded like an app. And they scoff at the idea that there could be a coordinated agenda behind it all. You know, they can't fathom that entertainment could serve any purpose beyond entertainment. As if Hollywood's only job is to make money, you know, and to give people what they want. But no one ever stops to ask, why do people want that in the first place? Well, the truth is that the industry doesn't exist to entertain, it exists to influence. And don't get me wrong, sex and violence will always sell. I mean, and there's plenty I could say about the corruption and indulgence of modern entertainment, but at this point, it's not even about entertainment anymore. It's just indoctrination. And that makes perfect sense once you understand who the real ruler of this world is. Because Satan isn't just corrupting culture, he owns culture. And the entertainment industry is his pipeline, you know, just a nonstop stream of godless ideology pumped straight into the bloodstream of society. That's why everything is radically progressive and sexually confused and morally relative, anti-family, anti-God, pro-death, anti-life. It's all the same, and it's all we ever see. And as a satanic strategy, it's been unbelievably effective. I mean, just look around, because the results speak for themselves. That's why actors have become activists, and that's why pop stars are now political influencers. Because the moment that Hollywood starts preaching something, the masses start believing it.
Stay home. I mean, everybody. I mean, we got this virus, this pandemic.
See, the important thing is that you stay at home because there's a curfew now.
We all need to stay home. We need to stop the spread of this virus, and we can only do it together.
The public trusts celebrities when they are actually active and excited about getting vaccinated. There is no question that that has an impact on the general public's ability to understand that, look, if they're doing it, maybe we should do it.
Ryan Reynolds nominated me to help spread the word to Canadians to help plank the curve. Stay inside, wash your hands, just don't leave the house.
And while the agenda might seem obvious to some of us, the majority still can't see it. And in a way, they're honestly not much different than those Haitian voodoo zombies that we talked about earlier. Only instead of being drugged into submission, they're being enslaved by their favorite forms of media. They're slaves to the television or smartphone screens. You know, there are so many people today who don't know how to form a single original thought. You know, they don't even have their own preferences. Even their opinions were planted. And their imaginations were shaped. I mean, the movies, the music, the sports, the politics, the fashion, the trends, on and on and on. It was all introduced to them in childhood and then reinforced through repetition. And now they walk around confidently talking about the latest Netflix series or the score from last night's football game, as if that matters. You know, when they pat each other on the back and find their identity in entertainment, believing that their interests are organic when in reality they've all been engineered and conditioned to confuse influence with identity. So, I'm sorry, I know I was kind of ranting there and maybe got a little off script, but I just feel like that needs to be said, because at some point, when a theme keeps getting repeated over and over again, across generations, across platforms, and across every form of media that you can imagine, well, it stops looking so much like entertainment and it starts looking like propaganda. And that kind of blind absorption is exactly what's happening with this fictional zombie narrative too. You know, the settings change, the characters change, and the rules may vary, but the formula had generally stayed the same. You know, the zombies break in, morality breaks down, religion gets mocked, children are trained to kill, the family unit is decimated, and every man is forced to choose between loyalty and survival. But what's crazy is that it didn't just stop with the late-night horror marathons and R-rated movies. No, eventually, it came for the kids. You know, suddenly it wasn't just grown-ups watching heads get bashed in on screen. Zombies were now showing up in elementary schools, you know, and in comic books and Saturday morning cartoons, and on it goes. And then, of course, there's the video games. Entire generations of children being raised in digital war zones, you know, training their reflexes to kill without hesitation, to aim for the head, pull the trigger, and move on, and just shoot down these endless waves of enemies that look human, but aren't classified as human. You know, and just casually teaching kids to kill their former neighbors and their friends and their family members and to feel nothing while doing it. But anyways, that rabbit hole goes deep, so I'm not even going to touch on it anymore here. But rest assured, we will get into that later, this video game stuff, and when we do, you'll never be able to see it the same way again. Because what's going on when one of the darkest and most violent and disturbing ideas in pop culture history has now become family friendly? You know, and I'm not trying to sensationalize this. I mean, it's not like zombies are the first monsters to ever be rebranded as harmless over time. You know, we've seen vampires and mummies and werewolves become commonplace in family entertainment. But even compared to those, there's no other fictional creature that has impacted our culture quite like the zombie has. And I'm here to argue that there's a good reason for that, you know, or maybe a horrible reason, depending on how you look at it.
Let's get it. Bash her head. Bash her head.
Because once we accept the idea of a zombie apocalypse as just another entertainment trope, we don't ask why this concept has been fed to us for generations. We don't pause to consider what it might be preparing us to accept. And I think it goes without saying that when you mix this level of heartless violence with the divided and volatile state of the world right now, where everything is politicized, and where people are split into tribes and enemies and opponents, where fear and hatred have become social defaults, well, it just doesn't paint a pretty picture, especially when you add spiritual warfare to the mix, because the zombie narrative kind of parallels the fall of man. It's like watching Romans 1 unfold in real time. A culture that has rejected its creator and now been handed over to depravity, and become filled with every kind of wickedness and violence and heartlessness that you could imagine.
And even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a reprobate mind to do those things which are not convenient, being filled with all unrighteousness, fornication, wickedness, covetousness, maliciousness, full of envy, murder, debate, deceit, malignity, whisperers, backbiters, haters of God, despiteful, proud, boasters, inventors of evil things, disobedient to parents, without understanding, covenant breakers, without natural affection, implacable, unmerciful, who, knowing the judgment of God, that they which commit such things are worthy of death, not only do the same, but have pleasure in them that do them.
And I think it's a fitting comparison because even the Bible describes the unsaved man as a kind of walking dead, alive in the flesh but dead in the spirit. But in this world today, this concept of spiritual death has been totally lost, and the idea of resurrection has become completely distorted. And that's the kind of world that will exist in the last days. Not necessarily a world where the dead rise from their graves, but a world without discernment and without compassion. A world without God. A world where people have been trained, literally trained, to shoot the infected without flinching. And where something as simple as a disease can justify lockdowns and checkpoints and absolute government control. Where killing can be excused as long as it's for the greater good. Maybe we've already lived through the dress rehearsal. We've seen how fear can be weaponized. We were all there during the pandemic when we saw people being split into safe and unsafe, or essential and non-essential, and we watched neighbors turn against each other all in the name of public health. We saw how millions were pressured, if not outright forced, into experimental injections, not because they were sick, but because they were told it was the only way to move forward. And let's be real, all that stuff that we saw unfold during the pandemic, it was really sort of familiar. It looked a lot like something straight out of a zombie movie. Maybe what we once saw as a cliché horror narrative was actually a blueprint, branded into the minds of adults and children alike. You see, the purpose of this video, Chapter 1, is just to lay the groundwork. But as we move forward, we're going to take the zombie narrative far beyond the realm of fiction and folklore and drag it straight into reality, into a world where millions of dollars are being poured into life extension technology and human resurrection research, where Silicon Valley elites and biotech firms are openly chasing digital immortality and synthetic consciousness, where viruses are engineered, genes are manipulated, and synthetic life is created inside high-security laboratories, all with little to no oversight. You see, we're living in a world where military agencies and government institutions have actually drafted real-world strategies to combat hordes of infected humans, where zombie preparedness drills and CDC campaigns and Pentagon simulations aren't just Halloween jokes. No, they're protocol. And we're going to expose those headlines. We're going to follow the money. And we will peel back the mockery to reveal a disturbing reality, that this zombie narrative is actually a mask for something very real, dragging mankind towards a future that's far more horrifying than anything Hollywood ever imagined. Why are emergency responders and law enforcement being trained to handle zombie outbreaks? Why is taxpayer money being used on drills that simulate the collapse of society due to a viral apocalypse? And why has the mainstream media spent decades publishing articles that speculate on the scientific plausibility of zombies, all while telling us that it's just a joke? Why normalize the mass panic if there's nothing to prepare for?
Dozens of military, law enforcement, first responders, and actors battled against the so-called zombie apocalypse, part of a 5-day counter-terrorism summit organized by Halo Corporation.
We were told that the zombie apocalypse wasn't real. And maybe that's true. But if you ask me, the war has already begun. Because the real Walking Dead, they're not monsters climbing out of the dirt. They're clocking in for work. They're scrolling through their phones. They're walking dogs, waving to neighbors, raising kids, sitting in church pews, even standing behind the pulpit. They smile, they vote, they breathe, but inside they're already gone. And in the last days, when the love of many grows cold, when truth is traded for comfort, and when brother turns against brother in the name of survival, the Walking Dead won't look like monsters. They'll look like me and you.